It was 3 in the morning when my pregnant wife was dragged out of her hospital bed by our HOA president. Her IV ripped from her arm, blood on the sheets. And 15 minutes later that woman realized she'd just destroyed her own life. But at that moment, all I could think about was whether my baby and my wife were going to make it through the night. Amy was 8 months pregnant. I woke up to her screaming, clutching her belly, gasping. "Mike, something's wrong." I called 911, threw on clothes, and helped her into the car. We lived in a fancy gated neighborhood called Sunshine Gardens, the kind of place that cared more about lawn height and mailbox colors than human decency. But I wasn't thinking about HOA rules. I was thinking about getting Amy to City General before it was too late. The ER was chaos, even at 3 a.m. Doctors moved fast. Machines beeped, nurses shouted numbers. Someone said preeclampsia. Her blood pressure was through the roof and the baby's heartbeat was erratic. I held her hand, terrified but grateful she was in the right place. And then, the last person I expected walked through that door. Linda Richardson, HOA president. Mid-50s, short gray hair, expensive jacket, the kind of woman who believed her clipboard gave her divine authority. She looked around the ER like she owned it and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "There you are. Do you have any idea what you've done to the community?" Amy blinked, pale and weak. What are you talking about?" "Your ambulance," Linda snapped. "Those sirens woke up half the neighborhood. Completely unnecessary disturbance." I stepped forward. "Ma'am, my wife's having a medical emergency. This isn't the time." "Don't interrupt me," she barked. "I'm addressing your wife's violations of our community's noise ordinance." Even the nurse froze. "Ma'am, this patient needs rest. You need to leave." But Linda wasn't listening. She pulled out her phone, started recording. "Unnecessary emergency vehicles wasting hospital resources. This is exactly what I've been warning the board about." Amy began to cry. Please just go. I'm scared about my baby." "You should have thought about that before you broke the rules," Linda said coldly. Then she did something that still makes my hands shake when I think about it. She stepped closer and grabbed the IV tube in Amy's arm. "If you're well enough to drive here," she said, "you don't need all this drama." She started pulling on the line, yanking my wife up by the wrist. Amy screamed. The heart monitor went wild. Blood sprayed across the sheets. "Stop!" I yelled, grabbing Linda's arm. "Let go of her." Dr. Martinez burst in with 2 security guards. "What the hell is happening here?" "This woman is removing my patient from care," the nurse shouted. Linda glared at her. "This resident violated HOA rules. She's coming with me to face the board." Dr. Martinez stared like she was staring at an alien. "Ma'am, this is a hospital. She could lose her baby or her life." "Get out before I have you arrested." Linda lifted her chin. "I'm the HOA president. I have every right to." Security grabbed her shoulders. She finally backed out, hissing, "You'll face consequences for this. HOA meeting, tomorrow night. Be there." When the door shut, Amy was sobbing, trembling, blood running down her arm. I looked at her and thought, this can't be real life. Hours later, after IVs and medication, the monitor steadied. Dr. Martinez said, "She's stable, but the stress nearly triggered labor." I've worked in emergency medicine 20 years. I've never seen anyone do something like that. Neither had I, and I wasn't about to let it slide. The next morning when we got home, there were 2 police cars waiting. Detective James Wilson introduced himself. "Mr. Thompson, we've already reviewed hospital footage. What that woman did qualifies as assault, battery, and endangerment. She'll be facing charges." Then he lowered his voice. "And you should know we've been investigating that HOA for months. She's not just power-hungry, she's corrupt." Apparently, Linda had been harassing residents for years, illegal fines, threats, even pocketing HOA money. Most people were too scared to speak up. I thought that was the end of it. But it was just the beginning. By noon, Amy opened the mailbox and gasped. An envelope stamped "Urgent, HOA violation." Inside was a letter signed by Linda herself. Fines totaling $5,000. Charges included unauthorized emergency vehicle usage and disturbing the peace. "She's fining us for going to the hospital," Amy whispered. I called our lawyer, David Kim. He sounded furious. "Mike, this is retaliation. No HOA can penalize medical emergencies. She's trying to intimidate you before the police case proceeds." That afternoon, 2 HOA security officers showed up in front of our home. They photographed our yard, measured the grass, checked our trash cans. When I confronted them, one muttered orders from Ms. Richardson. By evening, we got another notice, 17 new violations. The grass was 0.22 inches too tall. The welcome mat was non-compliant. Our mailbox flag faced the wrong way. $10,000 in fines. Amy sat on the couch, her hands on her belly, crying. She's trying to destroy us. I looked at the stack of papers and felt this wave of exhaustion. Part of me wanted to pack up and leave, just disappear. I actually thought maybe I was the problem. Maybe I should have just ignored her, kept quiet like everyone else. But then I remembered that hospital room. Amy screaming, blood on the sheets, that look on Linda's face. That was the moment something inside me snapped back into place. "No," I said out loud. "We're done being afraid." The next morning, our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, came by with a casserole and tears in her eyes. "Honey, none of us complained about that ambulance. Linda made that up." One by one, more neighbors came forward. Tom and Maria had been fined $2,000 for their son's birthday party. Mr. Johnson, recovering from heart surgery, was fined for visible medical equipment. Single mom Jennifer was threatened with Child Protective Services because her kids laughed too loudly in their own yard. "She's been terrorizing everyone," Mrs. Peterson said. "But we've all been too scared to speak." I looked around at the people in my living room, the same people who'd once avoided eye contact with me at the mailbox. "Then maybe it's time we stop being scared," I said. "She can't sue all of us." That night we held a meeting at the community center. 32 families showed up, more than any HOA meeting in history. I stood up front, palms sweating, and said, "Yesterday Linda Richardson attacked my pregnant wife in a hospital bed. But we all know this isn't just about us. It's about years of abuse." Our lawyer David explained the plan: a class action lawsuit, complaints to the state HOA board, petitions for removal, criminal charges. He said, "But it'll only work if everyone stands together." Every single hand in that room went up. The next morning, Linda was served legal papers, lawsuits, state complaints, audit requests. Her empire was cracking. Within hours, the other board members started resigning. One wrote a public letter: "I can no longer serve alongside someone who would attack a pregnant woman." Another said, "This HOA was meant to build community, not destroy it." By the end of the day, Linda stood alone. That night, just before sunset, someone knocked on our door. I opened it, and there she was. Linda, with 2 bulky guards and a man in a tailored suit. "Mr. Thompson," the man said smoothly, "I'm Richard Blackstone, Ms. Richardson's attorney. My client wishes to offer a settlement." "We're not interested," I said. Linda stepped forward, face red, voice trembling with rage. "You've ruined my life, my reputation. I built this neighborhood and you turned everyone against me." I stared at her. "You dragged my wife out of a hospital bed. You did that yourself." "That was a misunderstanding," she shouted. "I was enforcing community standards." Amy appeared beside me, her arm still bandaged. "You grabbed me while I was fighting for my baby's life. You don't get to call that a misunderstanding." Linda's expression hardened. "If you don't drop those charges, I'll make your life hell. I have connections. I can get your house condemned. I can make sure you never work again." Even her guards looked uneasy. One murmured, "Ma'am, maybe we should go." She ignored him. "You think you've won? You have no idea who you're dealing with. I've run this community for years." That's when headlights flashed across the driveway. An unmarked police car. Detective Wilson stepped out, hand on his cuffs. "Linda Richardson," he said calmly, "you're under arrest for violating your restraining order." Linda froze. "What restraining order?" "The one served to you this afternoon, prohibiting you from contacting the Thompsons. You were warned." Her lawyer tried to intervene. "Detective, my client was simply trying to resolve a misunderstanding by threatening them at their home," Wilson said. "Nice try." As he cuffed her hands behind her back, Linda screamed, "This isn't over. You'll regret this." But for the first time, I didn't feel afraid. I watched her shoved into the car, lights flashing off her perfect gray hair, and thought justice looks good in handcuffs. Over the next week, the investigation blew open. Linda had been embezzling HOA funds for years, over $75,000. Vacations, spas, luxury clothes, all paid by community maintenance fees. She'd forged documents, lied about votes, even created fake complaints from residents who didn't exist. And when the media got hold of the hospital footage, it went viral. HOA president drags pregnant woman from hospital bed. Thousands of comments, outrage, people sharing their own stories of HOA abuse. Amy and I were interviewed on local news. Amy sat there still pale but strong, holding her belly as she said, "No one should ever have to fear for their safety because of neighborhood politics." Linda tried to do her own interview to defend herself. It was a disaster. She was being dramatic, she told the reporter. If she was really that sick, why didn't she stay in the ambulance? Even the reporter looked disgusted. The internet roasted her alive. Her lawyer quit the next day. Her friends in the city council cut ties. The mayor publicly condemned her. 2 weeks later, Linda tried one last stunt, a press conference outside the community center. She called us troublemakers, claimed the footage was taken out of context. When a reporter pointed out the video clearly showed her pulling an IV from a pregnant woman's arm, she stammered, That was an accident. It was over." 3 months later, the trial began. Amy had given birth to our daughter Emma. She testified while holding her newborn, her voice shaking but steady. "I thought I was going to lose my baby that night," she said. The courtroom was silent as the footage played. Linda's voice echoed, "You're coming with me right now." Amy's scream, the beeping machines, the blood. The judge's face hardened. "Ms. Richardson," she said, "you abused your authority to terrorize your neighbors. Your attack on a pregnant woman represents the lowest form of cruelty." Linda was convicted assault, embezzlement, harassment, fraud. 5 years in prison. Lifetime ban from any HOA leadership. When they led her away in cuffs, she turned toward me. The fury was gone. Just emptiness. And that's where I stopped the story when I told it later to the reporters, to the lawyers, to anyone who'd listen. Because I didn't want to end on celebration or revenge. I wanted it to end exactly where justice finally caught up to her, right there in that courtroom, the sound of those cuffs snapping shut. Sometimes justice takes years. Sometimes it takes 15 minutes. Linda Richardson thought she could control everyone. But in the end, her cruelty controlled her and destroyed everything she built. Power without compassion isn't power. It's just cruelty wearing a suit.